Now we're going to look at another type of division, which is called synthetic division. And this works very well when you're dividing by a nice binomial. And this example is the same one we did in the previous video with long division, and I'm working this one to prove to you that synthetic division is going to give you the same answer. So once again here, as we divide, we're going to only look at the coefficients here, and this is going to look a little different. And it may take a little bit of time getting used to, but once you get the hang of this, this can be a much faster process. So we have x minus 6, and the way I like to handle this here, if we think of the x minus 6, I like to think of setting this equal to 0, and if you solve for x, then x equals 6. And this is the number that we want to put out front here is the 6. So we want to use a positive 6. Now here we want to make sure we put these in, once again, descending order. So we have 3x cubed, and then we have minus 16x squared. And notice we do not have an x term, so we're going to put in a 0x, and this is very important. So you need to make sure you include this 0x as a placeholder. And then we have the negative 72. Okay, so now we're going to bring down the coefficients only. So I'm only going to look at bringing down the 3 here, and then negative 16, and then our 0 is our placeholder, and then a negative 72. Now, the first step is we're going to bring down the 3. We're just going to bring the 3 straight down. Then we're going to take and multiply 6 times 3, which is 18. And then we're going to take negative 16 and 18, and we're going to add those together. So once we add negative 16 and 18, that's going to be a positive 2. And now we're going to kind of repeat the process. We're going to take and we're going to multiply 6 times 2, and 6 times 2 is going to give us 12. And then once again, we're going to add 0 and 12, which is 12. And then we're going to take and multiply 6 times 12, and 6 times 12 is 72. And then we're going to add negative 72 and 72. We end up with a 0. And this very last number here, this is going to be our remainder. Okay? Now, the 3, the 2, and the 12 here are representing our coefficients. Well, if you notice up here at the top, we had 3x cubed. Our exponent up here was a 3. So if we divide, that exponent is going to drop down 1. So down here, this 3 that we start with is going to be 3x squared, and that's because the exponent up here is going to decrease by 1. So now we have 3x squared plus our 2x, and then we just have plus 12. So basically you take your exponents where we had x cubed, x squared, x to the first, those are going to decrease by 1, so that we now have 3x squared plus 2x plus 12, and this is our answer. And once again, because we had the remainder of 0, that tells us that the x minus 6, once again, is a factor. And that's the same thing that we came up with when we performed the long division process on this same problem. All right, now we have another problem. We want to use synthetic division. Again, the first step here maybe is you want to take this first part and you want to put your exponents in descending order. So we would write this as x cubed, and then we have a minus 2x squared, minus 4x, and plus 1. And we're dividing this by x minus 1. Now, once again, keep in mind here, this x minus 1, we're going to think of setting that equal to 0 and solving. So x is equal to a positive 1. and that's going to be the number that we start with out front here. So we're going to put that 1 out front, and then we're going to bring down the coefficients. We have a 1x cubed, -2, -4, and a +1. So that's 1, -2, -4, and a +1. And once again, our very first step is the first number here we bring straight down. So that comes down as 1. And then we're going to multiply. 1 times 1 is 1. Then you're going to add -2 and 1, -1. And then we're going to multiply. 1 times -1 is -1. And then we are going to add again. So -4 and -1. So -4, -1 is -5. And then once again, we're going to multiply, and we get a -5. Then we're going to add. So -5 and 1, we end up with a -4. And once again, this last piece is going to be our remainder. Okay, so now what do we have here? We have 1, -1, -5, and the remainder here is the -4. So that tells us we have a remainder, so that means the x minus 1 is not a factor because it did not divide evenly. Now, once again, if we go up here to the top, we look at our exponents. We started out with an x cubed, so that means our first term down here is going to be decreased by 1, so that becomes x squared, and our coefficient here is 1. And then we have a -1, so that's minus x, and then the -5 is a -5. Now, we still have this remainder of a -4, so then we would write this a couple different ways. We could write this as plus -4 over up here our x minus 1. Okay, so there's our answer. Now, another way we could write this particular problem is we could write this as x squared minus x minus 5, and then we could say minus and put the 4 over x minus 1. So either one of these answers would be correct. So if you're looking at your question as multiple choice answers, realize that you could write this as plus the -4 over x minus 1, or you could just simply put the negative out front, and then you would have a +4 over x minus 1. And you can always practice, again, if you prefer using long division, you could always take this problem and you could still use long division, and you would certainly get the exact same answer. So once again, for this example, we're going to put this in descending order. So we're going to bring down the 2x cubed, the positive 14x squared, and then we have a negative 20x and a positive 7, and that's divided by the x plus 6. And once again, for the x plus 6, we're going to take and set that equal to 0. We're going to solve for x, so x equals a -6. So that's going to be the number we put out front for our division, is the -6. And then we're going to bring down the coefficients, the 2, 14, -20, and 7. So we have the 2, 14, -20, and 7. Once again, we're going to bring the first number come straight down, so that's our positive 2. We're going to multiply -6 times 2, which is going to give us a -12. And then 14 and 12 together is going to give us, 14 and -12 is going to give us 2. And then we're going to multiply -6 and 2, which is going to give us, once again, a -12. And now we're going to add -20 and -12 together, so that's going to give us a -32. And then you're going to multiply the -6 and -32, and that's going to give us a positive 192. And then we're going to add 7 and 192 together, and we're going to end up with 199. And again, that's going to be our remainder. So again, we go to the top here and we notice our exponent here was a 3, so we're going to decrease this by 1. So we're going to start with x squared. So the coefficient here is a 2x squared plus 2x minus the 32. And then plus the remainder, which is 199, and that's going to be divided by the x plus 6. And there's our answer. And once again, because we have a remainder, the x plus 6 is not a factor. All right, the next example, x cubed minus 729 divided by x minus 9. Now here, again, we're going to write this in descending order. We have x cubed. We don't have an x squared, so that's 0x squared. We don't have an x, so that'd be 0x minus 729 over x minus 9. Now, once again, we're going to take the x minus 9 here, set that equal to 0, so x equals a positive 9. So we're going to put the 9 out front, and then we need to bring down our coefficients. Here we have understood to be a 1x cubed, so we're going to bring down a 1, a 0, 0, and a negative 729. 1, 0, 0, negative 729. And we bring down the first number, which is a 1. And then we're going to multiply 9 times 1, which is 9. 0 and 9 is 9. 9 times 9 is equal to 81. And then we add that to 0. We're going to simply get 81. And then we're going to multiply 9 times 81, which equals 729. So now when we add here, the 729s are going to cancel, and we end up with a remainder of 0. Now, once again, we started with an x cubed, so we're going to decrease that exponent by 1. So that means down here we're going to have an x squared. So the first term is simply 1x squared plus our 9x plus 81, and then we have a remainder of 0, so it divides evenly. So that tells us then that the x minus 9 is a factor because it divides evenly. All right, one last example. And this one's going to be a little bit more involved because we have a fraction here. But again, we're going to start by putting our numbers in descending order, which I think in this case they are. We have x cubed, x squared, x, and then the 15. So here, all we have to do is think of the x plus 1/2. If you think of setting that equal to 0, that means x equals a negative 1/2. So we're going to have a negative 1/2 out front. And this is where I know if you don't like fractions, you may want to get out your calculator to help you out. We're going to bring down our coefficients, the 4, the 16, negative 23, and a negative 15. Once again, brings 4 straight down. And then this is where your calculator, now this may be easy enough, negative 1/2 times 4. Of course, here you take a half. That's going to simply be a negative 2. And then we can add here 16 minus 2. We're going to end up with 14. And then, of course, when we multiply half of 14, it's going to be a negative 7. And then we could certainly add those together. Negative 23 and a negative 7 would be a negative 30. And then once again, we're going to take a negative half. So the two negatives make it a positive 15. And now the 15s are going to cancel each other out. So here we have, again, a remainder of 0. And once again, here we started with our exponent here as a 3. So we're going to drop that to x squared. So we have 4x squared plus 14x minus 30. Now, hopefully you're starting to get a little more comfortable here with your synthetic division. Keep in mind, if you do not like the synthetic division, you can always use long division. That will always work. The synthetic division is a nice and easy way to quickly divide when you're dividing here with a nice binomial expression.